My dear friends, today I want to talk about something of the utmost importance, something that transcends the material world, something that defines who we are as human beings. It is the very foundation upon which our souls rest, the beacon that guides our hearts through the darkness. I speak of the most important human values, the qualities that elevate us from mere existence to true living. Let us reflect on 5 of these essential values. Love is the greatest commandment. This is not merely a suggestion, my friends, but the very law of the Creator. It is the heartbeat of the Christian life, and it is the foundation of every true moral system. We often hear the phrase, love one another, but what does it truly mean? What is this love that Christ calls us to embody? To begin with, love is not a mere feeling. The world would have us believe that love is a fleeting emotion, something that comes and goes depending on circumstances. But true love, as the Scriptures tell us, is a decision, not a sentiment. It is the choice to place the good of another person above our own desires. It is the willingness to sacrifice, to endure hardship, and to pour ourselves out for the sake of those around us. It is love that calls us to go beyond ourselves, to look to the welfare of others, even when it costs us something dear. In the Gospel of John, Christ gives us the ultimate example of this love. He says, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." In these words, he defines the essence of true love, self-sacrifice. True love is not about receiving, it is about giving. It is about putting others first without counting the cost. Love, in its purest form, is not about seeking to be loved, but about being willing to love without expecting anything in return. It is an act of the will, not just of the heart. This love is also unconditional. The love that Christ asks of us does not depend on the worthiness of the recipient. We are called to love not because others deserve it, but because God has loved us first. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus teaches us that love is extended not only to those who are like us, but to all people, especially those who may seem distant, alien, or even enemies. This is the love that breaks down walls, that crosses boundaries, that sees no barriers between us. It is a love that is both inclusive and expansive, a love that sees the inherent dignity of every human person as a child of God, regardless of their status, background, or past mistakes. Moreover, love calls us to forgiveness. How often do we find ourselves in situations where the greatest challenge is not to love in the easy moments, but in the moments when we have been hurt, betrayed, or disappointed? Forgiveness is not about forgetting the wrongs done to us. It is about choosing not to let bitterness or resentment take root in our hearts. Christ's love on the cross demonstrates that forgiveness is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. To forgive is to set oneself free from the chains of anger and to live in the liberty of love. It is the greatest form of love we can extend to others and to ourselves. The love that Christ speaks of is also a transformative love. It does not leave us unchanged. It calls us to grow, to become more than we are. The more we love, the more we are made in the image of the one who is love itself, God. When we love, we reflect the very nature of God, for God is love. And this love is not just a passive state. It is an active force that seeks to bring about good, to heal wounds, to build communities, and to inspire others to love as well. But, my dear friends, let us not be mistaken in thinking that love is always easy or convenient. Love is often challenging. It demands everything from us: our time, our energy, our patience, and sometimes even our comfort. Yet, in this very challenge, love reveals its true power. It has the ability to heal broken hearts, to reconcile relationships, to bring peace where there is discord, and to transform the world. As Fulton J, Sheen often reminded us, love is not a soft virtue. It is the hardest and most demanding, but it is also the most rewarding. And so, as we reflect on this greatest commandment, we must ask ourselves, how am I living this love? Am I loving those who are easy to love, or am I also loving those who are hard to love? Am I loving in word alone, or am I loving in deed and truth? To love as Christ loved is a call to a higher standard. It is a call to holiness, to put aside selfishness, and to seek always the good of others. In the end, the love that Christ asks of us is not just a command, it is an invitation, a beautiful invitation to be conformed to His image, to participate in the divine life of the Trinity. This love is the most radical force in the universe. It transforms lives, it builds bridges, and it conquers all. And when we love with this love, we become the living testimony of God's presence in the world. So, my friends, let us strive each day to love, not in our own strength, but in the strength that God provides. Let us love not for what we can receive, but for what we can give. And as we do, we will discover the truth of the words of Fulton Sheen. It is in giving that we receive. In loving, we become more fully the people God has created us to be. Truth is not simply a concept to be discussed in the abstract. It is the very fabric that holds the universe together. It is the light that reveals the true nature of things, and the light that enables us to see clearly in a world that is often shrouded in confusion and darkness. To seek the truth is to seek God Himself, for as Christ said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Truth is the ultimate revelation of God's nature, and it is through truth that we come to understand the meaning of our existence and our relationship with the Creator. In a world that is constantly shifting, where opinions change, facts are manipulated, and deceit often seems to reign, truth remains unchanging. It is eternal. It does not depend on circumstances or human perception. This is what makes truth such a powerful and stable force. Truth is absolute, and it is not subject to the whims of those who might try to redefine or distort it for personal gain or convenience. As Fulton J. Sheen often reminded us, the truth does not change because it is inconvenient. It does not bend to the demands of society or political correctness. Truth is constant and steadfast. Yet, truth is often elusive. It requires effort and dedication to seek it, for we live in a world where falsehoods are easily disguised as truths. We are constantly bombarded with competing narratives, ideologies, and opinions. The world tells us that truth is relative, that each person can have their own version of truth. But this is a dangerous lie. Truth is not subjective, and it is not a matter of personal interpretation. Truth is objective. It exists independent of our understanding or perception of it. It is the same for all, whether we accept it or not. In seeking truth, we must be willing to set aside our own biases, our own desires, and our own limited perspectives. Fulton Sheen often spoke of the need to be open to the revelation of truth through God. Truth is not something we merely possess. Rather, it is something that possesses us when we surrender ourselves to its light. To truly know the truth, we must humble ourselves, recognizing that our human understanding is insufficient and that we must rely on God's wisdom. Truth is not something that can be fully comprehended by the human mind alone. It is a mystery that unfolds gradually as we open our hearts to the wisdom of God. The search for truth, however, is not always comfortable. It may challenge our long-held beliefs, confront our pride, and force us to admit that we are wrong. Yet this is precisely the beauty of truth. It liberates us from the chains of deception and ignorance. As Christ himself said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Truth is liberating. It frees us from the shackles of lies, from the confusion of falsehoods, and from the tyranny of self-deception. When we walk in truth, we are no longer bound by the lies that enslave our hearts and minds. We are free to live authentically, to see the world as it truly is, and to understand our place within it. One of the most profound effects of truth is its ability to bring clarity. When we seek the truth, we are able to discern between what is right and wrong, what is good and evil, what is real and what is illusion. In a world of noise and distractions, truth is the still small voice that cuts through the chaos. It is the guiding star that directs our actions, shapes our choices, and provides us with a sense of purpose. Without truth, we are lost in a fog of uncertainty. But when we embrace truth, we are able to navigate the complexities of life with confidence and peace. Truth also has the power to heal. When we confront the truth about ourselves, our faults, our shortcomings, our sins, we are given the opportunity for repentance and transformation. There is no healing without truth. It is only when we come face to face with the truth about our lives that we can experience true reconciliation and growth. The truth may be painful, but it is always healing. It is like a surgeon's scalpel, cutting away the infection of sin and allowing the wound to heal. The truth makes us whole. Moreover, truth is the bedrock of all meaningful relationships. Without truth, there can be no trust, no understanding, no genuine connection between people. We live in a world where relationships are often built on superficiality and deceit. But authentic love and friendship are grounded in honesty. When we are truthful with others, we offer them the gift of trust and respect. And when we allow others to speak the truth to us, we invite them into our lives and acknowledge their dignity. Truth is the foundation of all love because love cannot exist without authenticity. To love someone is to seek what is true for them, to recognize and affirm the truth of who they are. The ultimate truth, however, is found in the person of Jesus Christ. He is the fullness of truth, and it is through him that we come to know the deepest truths about ourselves, about God, and about the world. To follow Christ is to walk in the light of truth. As we align ourselves with his truth, we are conformed to his image, and we become instruments of truth in the world. This is the mission of every Christian, to be bearers of truth, to proclaim it boldly, and to live it fearlessly. When we live according to the truth, we are no longer slaves to the lies of the world. We are set free, and in that freedom we find the fullness of life. In the end, truth is the only thing that can satisfy the deepest longings of the human heart. It is the foundation upon which all hope is built. Without truth, there can be no true joy, no true peace, no true fulfillment. But when we embrace the truth, when we live in the light of truth, our hearts are filled with the peace that comes from knowing that we are aligned with God's will, and that we are walking in the path of righteousness. The truth sets us free to be who we were always meant to be, and it is this freedom that leads us to eternal life. Compassion is not merely a passive sentiment. It is a dynamic force that moves us to action. In a world filled with pain and suffering, compassion is the bridge that connects us to one another in our shared humanity. It is the recognition that the suffering of others is not something to be ignored or brushed aside, but something that calls us to engage with it, to step into their world and to offer a hand of help. Compassion is more than sympathy. It is the willingness to be present with someone in their grief, their loneliness, or their despair, and to walk alongside them in their journey. In the words of Fulton J. Sheen, true compassion is not feeling sorry for someone from a distance. It is entering into their pain, feeling it in the depth of your soul, and offering them the healing presence of love. Compassion allows us to experience the suffering of others as though it were our own. It is not a detached emotion, but a deeply personal experience that stirs our hearts and compels us to act. It is the ability to stand in another's shoes, to see the world through their eyes, and to feel the weight of their burden on our own shoulders. Compassion bridges the gap between the self and the other. It erases the boundaries that separate us and allows us to recognize the inherent dignity of every person, regardless of their circumstances. When we show compassion, we are not simply offering charity or assistance. We are offering something far more profound, our very selves. Compassion demands that we give of our time, our energy, and our emotional resources. It asks us to be vulnerable, to open our hearts to the pain of others, and to allow that pain to stir us into action. The world often tells us to build walls, to protect ourselves from the suffering of others, and to focus only on our own comfort and success. But true compassion breaks down those walls and calls us to enter into the messiness of life with others. It is a call to be present, to listen, to care deeply, and to respond in ways that reflect God's love for us. It is through compassion that we are able to make a real difference in the lives of those around us. A kind word, a listening ear, a gentle touch. These small acts of compassion can have a profound impact. We often underestimate the power of simply being there for someone, of showing up when they are struggling, or of offering a word of encouragement when they feel forgotten. The gift of compassion is not always grandiose. It often takes the form of small, everyday acts of kindness that add up to something far greater. Compassion is the art of noticing the invisible, of seeing the person who feels overlooked or abandoned, and of giving them the gift of dignity and care. One of the most profound ways compassion manifests itself is in forgiveness. When we forgive, we choose to release the weight of anger, resentment, and hurt that we have carried. In doing so, we create space for healing, for both ourselves and the person who has wronged us. Forgiveness is a radical act of compassion because it demands that we look beyond the offense and see the person in their brokenness. We acknowledge that they, too, are human, and that their actions may have been born out of pain, fear, or ignorance. Compassion invites us to understand, to empathize, and to respond with mercy rather than judgment. It is through forgiveness that we offer the most profound form of healing, both to ourselves and to others. At its core, compassion is rooted in love, the love that we receive from God and the love that we are called to extend to others. As Christians, we are called to love our neighbors as ourselves, and this love is made manifest through our acts of compassion. When we show compassion to others, we are not only alleviating their suffering, but we are also living out the commandment to love. The love of God is active, and it is expressed through our care for one another. Compassion allows us to embody that love, to become instruments of God's healing presence in the world. In a world that can often feel cold and indifferent, compassion is the antidote to isolation and despair. It is the light that shines in the darkness, the warmth that melts the chill of loneliness, and the comfort that soothes the brokenhearted. Through compassion, we remind one another that we are not alone, that we are seen, that we are valued, and that we are loved. Compassion brings us together in our shared human experience. It unites us in our vulnerability, our pain, and our hope. It is through this shared connection that we find the strength to persevere, to heal, and to grow. Compassion is not a one-time act, but a way of life. Continuous practice of extending love and care to those around us. It is not always easy, and it often requires us to step outside of our comfort zones. But it is in the act of compassion that we discover the true meaning of life. Compassion transforms us. It opens our hearts, softens our edges, and makes us more fully human. It is the key to building a more just, loving, and peaceful world. A world where we recognize the inherent worth of every person and respond to their needs with kindness and empathy. In the end, compassion is the greatest gift we can give to one another. It is the language of the heart, the expression of the divine love that flows through us all. And it is through compassion that we become the hands and feet of Christ in the world, offering healing, hope, and love to those who need it most. When we live with compassion, we create a bridge that unites us all in our shared humanity, and in that bridge, we find the path to true peace and joy. Courage is often misunderstood. It is not the absence of fear, but the presence of strength in the face of fear. It is not the lack of uncertainty, but the willingness to move forward even when the path is unclear. Courage is not something that can be summoned only in times of safety and comfort. It is something that is revealed in moments of struggle, adversity, and trial. It is the strength to stand alone when the crowd disperses, to hold firm in your beliefs when others may mock, ridicule, or oppose you. Courage is the determination to do what is right, even when it seems easier or safer to do the opposite. To have courage is to embrace the truth, no matter how inconvenient or difficult it may be. It is the willingness to speak out when silence would be far more comfortable. Fulton J. Sheen often spoke about the moral courage to stand for truth, especially when it goes against popular opinion. It is easy to stand with the crowd, to follow the flow of what is accepted. But the truly courageous person is the one who dares to stand apart from the crowd when that crowd moves in a direction that is contrary to what is just, what is right, and what is good. Courage requires a steadfast commitment to truth, to live it, speak it, and embody it, even if it costs you everything. One of the greatest challenges of courage is facing opposition. It is not always easy to stand for what is right when the world is against you. The pressure to conform can be overwhelming. Whether it is peer pressure in school, societal expectations, or political ideologies, we are constantly being pulled to follow the majority, to blend in and not make waves. But courage is the decision to stand up, to stand tall, and to hold firm to what you know is right, even when it means standing alone. To be courageous is to reject the temptation to seek approval from others, and instead, seek approval from your own conscience and from God. Courage is not just about standing alone in moments of opposition. It is also about acting in times of fear. Fear is a natural human emotion, and we all experience it in various forms. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. But courage is the ability to act in spite of fear. It is the resolve to move forward, to keep going even when the road ahead seems treacherous, when the odds seem stacked against you. It is the resolve to take that first step, even when you do not know how the journey will unfold. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to overcome it, to face it head on, and still move forward. Fulton Sheen often spoke of the spiritual courage required to live out the Christian faith in a world that is increasingly hostile to it. To follow Christ is to live in a way that often stands in stark contrast to the values of the world. The Christian life is not one of compromise, where we shrink back to avoid discomfort or criticism. It is a call to radical faithfulness, to stand firm in our beliefs and trust in God's providence, even when the world around us is in turmoil. The courage to stand for one's faith, to be a witness to the truth of Christ, requires an unshakable commitment to God's word. It is the strength to be faithful when others are falling away, to continue in the path of righteousness when the world seems to be moving in the opposite direction. The courage to stand alone can also manifest in the quiet moments of personal struggle. Many of us face daily battles that no one else may see, whether it is the internal fight against our own weaknesses, fears, and doubts, or the external battle of maintaining integrity in a world that sometimes rewards dishonesty or manipulation. Courage is needed at every step. The courage to overcome personal weakness, to rise again after a fall, and to keep fighting the good fight is often the most difficult form of courage because it requires perseverance and self-discipline. It requires that we keep going even when we feel like giving up. It is in these small, everyday moments of struggle that courage is cultivated. There is also a moral courage that is often overlooked, the courage to be honest with oneself and with others. It takes courage to face the truth about our own faults, our mistakes, and our shortcomings. It is far easier to justify, deny, or avoid the truth about ourselves. But true courage lies in confronting that truth, in owning up to our failures, and in striving to improve. It is the courage to be vulnerable, to admit when we are wrong, to seek forgiveness, and to make amends. Only when we have the courage to be honest about ourselves can we grow and mature. Courage is also about hope, the belief that the effort is worth it, even when the outcome is uncertain. In the face of adversity, it is easy to lose hope, to feel overwhelmed by the obstacles before us. But courage keeps hope alive, for it is courage that fuels the belief that something better lies on the other side of the struggle. It is courage that enables us to hold on to the vision of a better future, even when the present seems bleak. The courageous person does not give in to despair. They press forward, believing that their efforts will make a difference, even if they do not see immediate results. In moments of deep personal or societal crisis, courage shines brightest. History is filled with examples of individuals who stood alone against powerful forces, who spoke out against injustice, or who sacrificed their own well-being for the good of others. These people were not exceptional because they lacked fear, but because they chose to act despite their fear. They chose to do the right thing, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Their courage changed the course of history, and their example continues to inspire us today. Courage, at its core, is the strength to do what is right, even when it is difficult, the courage to stand up for truth, for justice, and for love in the face of opposition. It is the courage to stand alone when others choose the path of least resistance, and it is the courage to keep moving forward, even when the road ahead seems uncertain. Courage does not come from our own strength, but from the strength that God provides. It is a gift from Him, a grace that sustains us in times of trial, and a virtue that leads us closer to our ultimate calling as children of God. When we have courage, we are not only capable of standing firm against the storms of life, but we also become beacons of light to others who are struggling. Courage is contagious. It inspires others to rise up, to face their own fears, and to stand for what is right. And in this way, courage builds a better world. It is through acts of courage, both large and small, that we shape the world and our future. Humility is often viewed through the lens of weakness, as if being humble is synonymous with being passive or lacking in strength. But in reality, humility is a profound strength, a virtue that lies at the heart of true greatness. It is the ability to recognize one's limitations and imperfections without falling into despair or self-deprecation. And it is the willingness to serve others selflessly without seeking personal gain or recognition. Humility is not a denial of one's worth or potential, but an honest acknowledgement that greatness does not come from self, promotion, or pride. It comes from surrendering oneself to a higher purpose, to God's will, and to the service of others. It is through humility that we are able to rise above our own ego and achieve a greatness that is rooted in selflessness and love. In the words of Fulton J, Sheen, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less. True humility is not a self-effacing posture that seeks to diminish oneself, but a deep understanding that greatness lies not in personal glory, but in the willingness to lift others up. It is the quiet strength to put the needs of others before your own, to serve without seeking reward, and to recognize that every accomplishment is a gift that comes from God. Humility frees us from the burden of comparison, from the constant need to prove ourselves to others, and from the unhealthy obsession with status or recognition. When we are humble, we are free to focus on what truly matters, living a life of integrity, compassion, and love. One of the most profound aspects of humility is the ability to admit mistakes. We all fail at times, and it is often our natural instinct to cover up our shortcomings, to hide our flaws, or to shift the blame onto others. But humility invites us to embrace our imperfections and take responsibility for them. When we have the humility to admit our faults, we open the door to growth and transformation. We no longer hide behind our pride or make excuses for our actions. Instead, we acknowledge where we have fallen short, learn from our mistakes, and strive to do better next time. Humility does not ask for perfection. It asks for honesty and a willingness to grow. Humility also opens our hearts to learn from others. It is easy to fall into the trap of thinking that we know everything or that our way is always the best way. But humility allows us to see the value in others' perspectives, experiences, and insights. It reminds us that no one person has all the answers, and that we can always learn something from those around us, whether they are mentors, peers, or even those we might consider our inferiors. Humility enables us to approach every situation with a teachable spirit, with an openness to hearing others' opinions, and with a recognition that every person has inherent value, regardless of their status or background. In the Christian tradition, the ultimate model of humility is Jesus Christ. In his life, Christ demonstrated the power of humility by choosing to live among the poor and the marginalized, by washing the feet of his disciples, and by willingly laying down his life on the cross for the salvation of humanity. Christ's humility was not weakness. It was the most powerful expression of love and strength the world has ever seen. He humbled himself not to diminish his divine nature, but to show us the way to greatness. Through his example, we are taught that true greatness is found in self-sacrifice, in loving others without condition, and in serving those who are often overlooked or forgotten by society. Jesus' humility was the path to his greatest triumph, the resurrection, which brought hope and redemption to the entire world. His humility led to his exaltation, and in the same way, our humility leads to the discovery of a greatness that is not rooted in worldly success, but in spiritual fulfillment and divine purpose. Humility is also the antidote to pride, which is the root of many of humanity's flaws. Pride leads to arrogance, selfishness, and an inflated sense of self-importance. It blinds us to the needs of others and fosters division, competition, and resentment. Humility, on the other hand, dissolves pride by reminding us that we are not the center of the universe. It helps us recognize that we are all part of a larger whole, and that our actions impact others. Humility brings us down from our self-created pedestal and places us in the position of a servant. It is through this position that we find true greatness, for greatness is not measured by how many people serve us, but by how many people we serve. In addition, humility requires the strength to be vulnerable. In a world that values success, strength, and achievement, vulnerability can seem like a weakness. But humility teaches us that there is great power in being open and transparent about our struggles, our fears, and our imperfections. It takes courage to let down our guard and allow others to see our true selves, without pretense or facade. Vulnerability is a form of humility because it acknowledges that we are not invincible, that we are not perfect, and that we need others. When we are vulnerable, we invite others to be real with us, and this creates authentic relationships based on trust and mutual respect. Humility allows us to say, "I don't have all the answers," and to lean on others when we are weak. Humility also requires patience with ourselves and with others. In a world that values instant gratification, humility teaches us that true growth takes time. Humility encourages us to trust in the process, to remain patient even when things do not go as planned, and to continue working toward our goals with a sense of grace and perseverance. Humility helps us avoid the temptation to rush ahead or to push others aside in our pursuit of success. Instead, we learn to be patient with ourselves, knowing that every step along the way is part of our journey. And we learn to be patient with others, understanding that they too are on their own path of growth and development. Ultimately, humility is the path to peace, inner peace, and peace with others. When we are humble, we no longer feel the need to compete or compare ourselves with others. We are content with who we are, and we are at peace with our own limitations. Humility frees us from the constant striving for external validation and allows us to live in harmony with ourselves and with those around us. It enables us to offer forgiveness, to let go of grudges, and to embrace the unity that comes from recognizing the dignity and worth of every person, no matter their position or status. In a world that often values power, prestige, and popularity, humility stands as a radical and countercultural virtue. It teaches us that true greatness is not measured by how many people know our name or how much wealth or influence we possess, but by how well we serve others, how much love we give, and how closely we align ourselves with God's will. Humility leads us to recognize that we are all part of a larger story, and that our worth is not defined by what we accomplish, but by the love we offer to others and the grace we receive from God. It is through humility that we find the true path to greatness. Greatness that is not of this world, but is grounded in the love, peace, and joy that come from walking humbly with God and with others. Let us remember that these values, love, truth, compassion, courage, and humility, are not merely abstract concepts. They are the very heartbeat of the Christian life. They are the foundation of a soul that seeks to be conformed to the likeness of Christ. Live these values with all your heart, and you will find that the deepest fulfillment is not in seeking worldly success, but in living with integrity, in loving unconditionally, and in walking humbly before God. As Fulton J. Sheen once said, "The world's greatest need is for men and women who will stand for the truth, love it, and live it." Let us be those men and women today and every day. God bless you all.